Hello, everybody, and welcome to Responsible AI in Action, where we are talking with some of the leading experts in responsible AI. I am very excited to have Renée Cummings joining us today. She is an award-winning AI innovator and is an AI data and tech ethicist. She's also the first data activist in residence at the University of Virginia's School of Data Science, as well as a long list of other accolades and just leadership roles in the space. So we're very excited to have you here today, Renée.
And I'm absolutely excited to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be part of this responsible AI community.
Yes, absolutely. It's been really incredible. We had the opportunity to connect at this point. It was a few years ago. And it's been so amazing to watch you in your career and see it develop, and especially how much AI has expanded in today's world. As we were mentioning before we started recording, sometimes it's just tough to keep up, but it's really amazing what you are doing in the space and what you're talking about in the space as well. I'm wondering if we could start there a little bit. What inspired you, or what led you into working in responsible AI?
My career as a criminologist and criminal psychologist, working in the criminal justice system, using risk assessment tools, and realizing that these tools were creating these zombie predictions that were overestimating the risks of defendants, particularly Black, brown individuals who may not have been as financially stable and fortified, who could have existed in the criminal justice system independently. So realizing that there was a question with fairness and asking myself, how are we coding fairness? Thinking about concepts such as machine learning and deep learning and neural networks, sort of like playing around with these concepts philosophically and looking at the ways in which they were being applied to the criminal justice system and looking at these risk assessment tools and saying, there's something about data that needs to be reimagined. If we are building these algorithms, we need to know a little more than the technical. And also asking myself, when these algorithms were being designed and developed and deployed to be used in the criminal justice system, I was asking myself, how many criminologists and criminal psychologists and forensic psychologists and social workers and educators and individuals who are impacted by the criminal justice system, how many of us and them were together or in the room when these tools were being developed? And I said, wait a minute, there's a place for me and there's a space for me, and I'm going to step into that space. And that's how I got involved in AI. And in particular, I consider myself a creative entrepreneur. So I love technology and I love what technology can do, the ways in which we can optimize the human experience. So I was saying to myself, instead of designing tools only to measure and evaluate risk and public safety, how could we design tools to make communities more resilient or to change the trajectory of lives of individuals who did not have the protective factors to ensure that their existence was more resilient and more sustainable and, of course, more wholesome? So it was a combination of the excitement for technology and my lifelong passion for justice.
Oh my gosh, it's so important. You bring up a really important point, that in how AI is being developed and created, it's important to consider who is in the room, who is creating, who is designing this technology. Is that a big reason why you are so passionate about responsible AI, is to figure out a way in which this technology can serve humanity at large as opposed to just a few select privileged few?
Most definitely. When I talk about technology, I always speak about bringing a justice-oriented and trauma-informed approach to the ways in which we are doing AI. Many years ago, I coined this term called data trauma, because one of the things that I was seeing as a criminologist was ways in which data continue to deploy intergenerational trauma in communities. And I wanted to ensure, if we were doing this technology right, where we're ensuring that our data sets were more diverse, of course, more inclusive. And my commitment to equity is always there. equity, fairness, justice, due process. These are so critical because I realize an algorithm has the ability to change the trajectory of someone's life for the worse or for the better in real time. It has the ability to create access and opportunity and provide resources, but it also has the opportunity to deny access, deny opportunities, and undermine the delivery of resources to communities. So I wanted to play a strategic role, one in bringing the awareness and the information and educating the public about how great this technology is, how promising this technology is, the great things that we can do with AI, but also educating AI as an industry about the risks, about the need to protect and uphold rights, and about the power of anything that creates, denies, or destroys a legacy. And that's how I look at AI and algorithms and data. These are legacy tools. And when we are playing with the legacy of society, of an individual, of a family, of humanity, we have got to bring a really sophisticated level of due diligence to the ways in which we're designing these tools.
I couldn't agree more with you there. In your experience working in the field, w- where or how could organizations or even individuals to a degree make sure that equity is within the foundation of creating these new technologies and specifically in our case creating AI?
I think it begins always with the data and asking yourself, the data that we have, what's the story with this data? What's the history of this data? What's the genealogy of this data? What's the anatomy of this data? We've got to ask those questions. And we've also got to ask ourselves the things that we want to build. Do we really need to build it? And if we do want to build a particular tool, are we building it in a way where we are paying particular attention to two things? Duty of care, which is our responsibility, not to be negligent in the ways in which we are building these systems. It's a responsibility to ensure whatever we're designing, developing, deploying is built with integrity. It has a requisite amount of public trust and, of course, public confidence in these tools, and also understanding that there needs to be a socio-technical interpretation of what we're building. And we've got to understand the context in which these tools are being deployed. So contextual information often requires interdisciplinary thinking. So I always speak about this interdisciplinary imagination that is so required to really harness the extraordinary rewards of AI.
I love this a lot, interdisciplinary imagination, especially when it comes to creating technology. That's so critically important is making sure that we have people from a wide variety of diverse backgrounds coming together and having conversations. It's so important in the development of new technologies and with AI. I would love to hear your opinion on, we recently saw Google suspending Gemini. There's a lot of conversations around how previous studies have shown that AI image generators amplify racial and gender stereotypes, found in their training data. And I know the situation with Gemini was a little different, but how do we address these issues when it comes to ensuring that AI isn't biased? Is there a way to fix that?
Well, I will say this. I don't think we can ever ensure that AI isn't biased because we are building this technology and each of us brings our own biases to the ways in which we think, interpret the perspectives that we deploy. And technology is no different. There are some biases that work for us and there are many that work against us. So we've got to come from a place of honesty if we're trying to build responsibility and integrity and trust into these tools. What we've been seeing over the last maybe 7 or 8 years when it comes to bias and discrimination and the sort of stereotypic systemic thinking that's being built into these systems. It's just not the bias and the discrimination. Those are important and they're very critical for us to deconstruct. But what we need to look at is that the technical approach to the ways in which we are building these systems continue to fail us. And this is why the socio-technical is so important. So when that individual is gathering these images and, of course, ensuring that these images become a part of this image generation tool. And even with image recognition, we're seeing the same thing when we think about facial recognition technologies and surveillance technologies in general. So there's a problem. And that problem needs more than a technical approach to design. It needs a socio-technical approach to design, because I think we are undermining the imagination of this technology when we leave it strictly up to technical approaches to do the designing and the developing and the deploying. So just that is saying that we need more people in that design space. We need more people when it more diverse and, of course, inclusive, and individuals who understand what responsible AI is and ethical AI is and trustworthy AI in that space. When we are looking at the data, when we're looking at those images, when we're labeling those images, very critical.
I feel like I always just learn so much in just hearing how you speak about emerging technologies, and also your passion for it as well really comes through. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join us on the show today, and not only for taking the time to join us, but as I mentioned before, I just really appreciate the work that you do in this space. Before we sign off, I'm wondering if you could just share with our listeners where they could find out more information about you and your work.
Oh, most definitely. University of Virginia School of Data Science. We have our website, and you can find me there. You can also find me at the Brookings Institution, and you can find me as well as All Tech is Human. Most people find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and all the other social media spaces. And I always say, this is a community that we're building. And if there's anything that I can do to support the work of anyone else, I'm always willing to do that, because all of us are required as we build a technology that's really going to uplift humanity and design the kind of future that we would all want to be a part of.
That's such a great way to end this episode. Renee, thank you so much again.
Thank you very much.